Job satisfaction has something to do with the job, but a whole lot more to do with the person. And if you start to look at work like this thing, this that's separate and apart from the man or the woman, have you made it the enemy? Have you suggested perhaps that it's the proximate cause of whatever unhappiness you have in your life? Most people have.
Welcome to Reeves Rants. I got a good story for you today. Managing Gen Z is like working with people from a different country. I think this brings up a whole lot of the changes that have gone in the last year and a half, and people not really understanding what they should be expecting from work, what they should be expecting to do, and where to go, how to act, and what to think. I believe that liberalism has broken the American worker's spirit. The Gen Z obviously hasn't been taught what to do, and every generation has dealt with issues. Every generation has had their problems. There was a generation that had Vietnam. There was a generation that had World War II. There was a generation that had Desert Storm. There's always a generation having issues that is coming into the workforce. And this article illustrates exactly the problem that the Gen Zs and the people making excuses for every generation are making everyone weaker. And that weakness in our ability to work or expect to have to work is making the problem itself. The expectations of what the employee wants and what they're willing to give. The employees aren't willing to give nearly as much as what they expect. And you'll see it in the first paragraph of this article, where this person, I'm very confused because it's written from a perspective of a expert. Of course, we love that word experts. People love to throw experts out there. But yet, these experts don't really seem to be given the real reality. And from a working class perspective, I can see that people just don't want to have expectations to work. And you'll see that through a bunch of the stories that I'll talk about along the way. But let's jump into this one right now. As more members of Gen Z enter the workforce, it can feel like battle lines are being drawn between younger employees and more established employees. That's not new. That's been going on with every generation beforehand. The mining industry, the coal mining industry specifically talked about this, and there's still a shortage of coal miners right now. Even though we don't really want coal, we still have a shortage of coal miners. There's a shortage of employees in America who want to work with their hands because these battle lines have always been drawn. These battle lines were drawn long ago when it came to employees coming out of college and taking jobs of people who had been at companies for years and ended up getting passed over by college educated youngsters taking older people with experiences expected jobs. Not to say that they actually deserve those jobs, but when you're in line for a position that you feel, and then you feel like you get jumped over by somebody from college, that's always been going on. So that's not a new thing. But in this article, it's being projected as this new idea. No, every generation has dealt with problems before. We're just making different excuses for this generation and the deterioration in the expectations on employees. Managers routinely call this generation entitled, complaining that they can't complete simple tasks. Meanwhile, Gen Z is frustrated that employers are often merely paying lip service to issues like health support, pay equity, corporate responsibility, and diversity. Too often, what gets said and written gets overlooked in what it's implying. And what's being implied in that paragraph is that employers are asking too much for employees to complete simple tasks without having given equity and health support and the things that are the exact piece that the Gen Zs aren't seeing, that the people making excuses for them aren't seeing. Equity isn't going to happen because there isn't equal output at work. So there shouldn't be equal pay for every single person. There should be no discrimination based off of any bias.
And my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
To say that you have to force that everybody get paid the exact same is the problem. It creates situations like quiet quitting or the new one, let it rot. These are because of taking away the ability for employees to overachieve other employees. When you force everybody at just a simple pay and no one can overachieve anybody else, then why would anybody overachieve anybody else? That doesn't make any sense that there would even be a psychological expectation that employees would output more if they all got paid the exact same. Employers need employees to show up to work and do the job. Just simple tasks. And the employees want a lot just to do the simple tasks that they can't even perform. And that absence of noticing it from the person writing the article and all of the people who've made all the excuses for the Gen Z and the gen before that and the gen before that and the gen before that, because as the article goes on to talk about every generation's had their own problems, and I mentioned this earlier, but every generation has handled their problems differently than this generation. You know, there's this expectation that everybody works the exact same and everybody has the same output. But that's not the fact. And as employees, we should be able to and have the ability to work harder to get more pay than somebody who's lazy or somebody who can't even complete simple tasks, as that article or as that paragraph points out. And therein lies the biggest problem, is that in 2 to 3 sentences, the whole problem's illustrated and the person writing it doesn't really notice it. They go on to make a lot more excuses as to how we should train them more and we should do this. If you can't do simple tasks, but you want equal pay to people who can do simple tasks, why do you deserve all those things? Why do you deserve for an employer to care about your mental health? And why does it matter to you if they're diverse or not, or whether they're corporately responsible or not? Do you even know what those two terms mean? Or the delusion that's been sold behind some of these ideas? We have seen in the last year a wave of the Great Resignation. We had people quitting like crazy because, we could just find jobs everywhere. There was an article that said how to handle the dreaded Zoom call where your boss asks you to return to work. So Apple employees got petitions going to prevent themselves from having to return to work. There's a weakness trend going on here. Weakness of these employees not seeing that they are, in essence, the problem. You have to be willing to complete those simple tasks if you want all those other things. There's a girl writes an article that she has a breakdown, basically, because she has to bring a sack lunch to work. She thinks it makes her look poor. the weakness that's being bred into our people, while the people are expecting a lot from the employers. And I don't want to stick up for the employers here, but there has to be an equivalency for your output and what you get back. I understand that. Employers got to pay to get back, and they're not necessarily paying the greatest right now, which is what's created a lot of the quiet quitting. So I understand where employees don't want to go ahead, don't want to go above and beyond. But some still do because they believe that there's a corporate ladder to climb. But how can they climb that corporate ladder if equity is going to be the reality? They get no extra for their extra work. Meanwhile, what the biggest problem for the working class is for gas prices and the raising prices of everything. Because unlike a lot of the people who write these articles and talk about these things, the working class doesn't have the abundancy of money to just complain about having to return to work after the pandemic. Working class people did that the whole time. We are the essential employees. And it's not to talk down to the rest, but there's a lack of understanding from the people who have spent a lot of time at home, working from home, who don't realize it's time to go back to work, who employees don't realize you have to be able to do simple tasks. Parents need to be able to teach their children to do simple chores and simple tasks around their home to where they can be prepared for entry-level positions. People can't keep falling back on there's always an excuse for this generation. We keep just getting weaker and weaker as people. That's why every generation has complained that every generation is lazy. Because it's actually been the reality. We've seen a deterioration in the performance of the American worker and the ability to do the physical work need to be done. Real world employees know that you get put into situations on a regular that go against your mental health. And this is inherently the biggest problem. This is the softest generation looking at the weakest things and thinking that they're equivalent problems to people being afraid that they were going to be drafted to go to World War II. With that being said, like, comment, subscribe, share, all those great things. Help me out. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers. Thanks for watching. Later.